You're listening to The Mint Project, the podcast to elevate your knowledge on pregnancy and postpartum fitness, nutrition, and more, along with parenting, business, and advice to keep you living your best life. The Mint Project is led by your expert trainers, Betsy Jones, Kara Forrester, and Jess Carr. With that said, let's do this. Welcome back to the Mint Project podcast. Jess, Betsy, and Kara here. Today we are chatting about a topic that gets us really fired up. It is postpartum stigmas and marketing tactics. But before we get into that, we gotta do a little poll. Maybe we'll put a poll on our Instagram. There's two types of people in this world. Kara and I are team keep all the tabs open on your browser. Oh. And Betsy is team close all your tabs and don't have a lot of tabs open.
Team minimalist. Team keep your life free of clutter. Your mind.
To me, keeping all the tabs open keeps my mind free of clutter. Like you guys just saw, I don't have to remember any passwords if it's already open. Yes. I don't have to find where I found it before. It's just there. So
it's there. And I never...
Jess, is that why you do it?
That, and I think I'm just lazy and I don't want to reopen tabs. I don't know. And I'm always like...
Yeah, and go find it
I feel like I'm always multitasking. So I'm going into my Google Doc and then I'm using something from that Google Doc in Canva or Facebook or whatever.
So that's fair of like your drive is open and I've got, this window. But like 20 of them, you're doing 20 windows at once. Don't you get distracted?
Yeah. Yes, very, very.
Yeah.
It's like, something pops up over here. Yes, it is distracting. I've been trying to be better about it.
Yeah. My husband Andre's computer is the same way. I'll open it and I'm like, you can't even read past the first letter on the tab because there's so many trying to squeeze into the browser.
Well, it's like whenever we share our screens, you're always like, oh my gosh, look at all those tabs. So, sorry.
It overwhelms me.
All right, so we'll put a poll on our Instagram, and you guys have to vote whether you're team tab or team no tab. But
Team Betsy is what it's called.
Yeah,
but we'll just leave it there.
Yeah, we're all also not the most tech savvy individuals, I guess you would say. I am tech savvy in certain ways because I worked in like digital marketing for a while, but in other ways we are not. Kara and I were trying to figure out why we couldn't hear each other on the pre-recording to this, and she didn't have her headphones on.
Yeah, that's why we couldn't hear. I was like, I'm not even wearing the headphones. All right. As soon as I put them on,
Kara.
cleared it up.
Okay, so speaking of Instagram and social media and Pinterest and all the things, by the time we publish this, I'll probably have posted that reel that I made the other day.
Yeah.
So today we're talking about postpartum stigmas and things that are just kind of annoying to us in the space. And the other day I did a little search on Pinterest, and you see this on Instagram too, but I did a search for pregnancy fitness, and literally 9 out of 10 as I was scrolling were things like how to lose your belly fast, how to lose weight in 6 weeks, abs for moms, how to not gain weight during pregnancy. And maybe one of the things was something related to like a recuperative or rehabilitative like type of post. But like the fact that there was nothing about being healthy through pregnancy, I think drives us all a little nuts. So that's what we're talking about today. And because my background is in marketing, I know exactly why people do this, because they market to women because successful marketing preys on insecurities and fears, right? So as moms, right. So like as moms, we have this like, I'm going to gain weight. And now we have this fear of, am I ever going to be able to lose it? And so these companies or these influencers come in, here, let me teach you how to lose it in 6 weeks really fast. And that speaks to these women who are already insecure, already dealing with a lot of other mental health things. And it just really needs to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's hard to see, I think, from the mental standpoint, like that can be, I know I especially had a really hard time afterward and even during pregnancy. I remember talking to my doctor and saying like, if I'm already struggling this much mentally during, I don't know what after is going to be like, because especially in our, I would say field or our community, whatever you want to call it in the fitness world, you're used to being able to control your body and you're used to being able to look and feel the way you want, or rather, if you don't, you know what actions to take to make that happen or to at least work towards that. So then there's almost this expectation of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say maintaining a healthy weight through pregnancy and postpartum is obviously important, and that's something that women should be talking to their doctors about. But going through pregnancy and thinking that my only priority is, oh, I only want to gain a belly, and if I gain any weight anywhere else, then something's wrong with me because these other women on Pinterest are doing that, and these other women lost their weight in 6 weeks after when they were postpartum. Like, yeah, mentally that's really challenging. And I know for me, similarly, like when I had my daughter, I didn't gain a ton of weight during pregnancy, but like you said, I was someone who was very health conscious and conscious of my body. And it took me almost a year before I went back to the gym, just for a variety of reasons. And then like seeing that type of stuff is even more mentally damaging. Like, oh, why can't I get myself back to the gym? Should I have lost all this weight? Like, so, and there's just other things that we need to prioritize.
Yeah, and it's kind of like you have to think your body has gone through, I mean, they say pregnancy is 10 months. That's 10 months of your body changing, your hormones changing, all this stuff. And then you have this experience where a baby comes out of you, however that happens, you know, whether it's surgical or, you know, vaginally. And then what? And then all of a sudden you're just supposed to be back to where you were. We wouldn't expect that out of any other physical transformation. Like, let's say someone, you know, even broke their arm. You wouldn't expect them to just be like, okay, well, tomorrow, you know, you got your cast off, just, you should be, you know, handstand walking again in the gym and doing pull-ups, and all the weight that you gained while you were in your cast or whatever, you know, should be gone. But for some reason, we do have that expectation with pregnancy and postpartum. I think it is because of a lot of the marketing and just seeing other people's experiences. And everybody is different. Everybody responds differently to different scenarios. And that just kind of comes down to also comparison. And just like, this is not the time to compare. This is your journey, your individual journey.
For sure. And it goes back to what we talked about a little bit in the last podcast, where like everyone's different. And we've had this huge shift in the fact that it's becoming more well known that women can work out through fitness. But that comes with good and bad because, then you're comparing yourself to the other mom on Instagram or at the gym that's maybe still lifting heavy weights, and that's not feeling right for you. Or maybe she's not gaining a ton of weight and you're struggling with that. And so mentally, rather than promoting not gaining, one of the ones I saw was like 9 habits of women who don't gain weight during pregnancy. And I'm like, that's a
sets a false expectation for women.
You will gain weight.
What were the habits?
Yeah.
What was one of the habits? I'm interested. How do you not gain weight?
Right. You're going to gain
I know.
weight.
Yeah. I know some women actually who have, I forget what it's called, but there are some circumstances where women actually do lose weight sometimes because they're so sick. And that is very different. That's not what we're talking about.
Yeah. And there's different levels of weight gain, whether what you come into your pregnancy with. There's different recommendations, but telling a woman who's, like you said, already self-conscious maybe about the fact that she's going to gain a little bit of weight during pregnancy, which, by the way, is normal and healthy, and you need to gain some weight because you have a baby in your body that is growing. It's just, it really messes with your mindset. And so
for sure,
I would recommend, if you are pregnant or very early postpartum, to stay off of certain media. Follow people who are promoting health and wellness and recovery, and not fitness influencers are promoting getting your body back and getting your abs back and all those things, because it's great to have goals postpartum. Like, you can absolutely have goals to get back to a certain point, but start with maybe some healthier goals, or give yourself enough time to get there.
Well, and like you said about time, you have to think, if pregnancy is 10 months long, and that doesn't even include, well, it includes, but let's say we're not factoring in whatever your birth experience was, you're saying that time in 6 weeks can be back to normal. Right. There's no way. I mean, I would say respectfully, it should take years, or can take years for some. And the biggest key there is that individualization for everybody, that no one should have expectations, because not only are we all different, but that baby and how it grows in your body is going to manifest differently in other people.
For sure. And okay, from a mindset perspective, we talk a lot about this in our trainer's course, how to work with women on mindset. And especially think about postpartum. Okay, you just had this child. Your whole world is now changed, especially if it's your first one, but maybe even more so if it's your second one, because now it's even double the crazy, right? Like, my priority after I had my child was surviving, like maybe getting a couple hours of sleep at night, feeding myself, feeding the child, trying to figure out the whole breastfeeding thing. Like, I did not have the mental capacity to think about losing weight, getting back to the gym, and that's okay. Like, but how do we teach that to other women, I think, is the question.
I think it's a constant reminder, don't you, Kara?
Yeah, and I think just not, I know this is easy to say sometimes, but just not even having those expectations on ourselves, like giving ourselves grace, and then in that way we can extend that to other people. So it's interesting that you said even with our second, like my first baby, she was, I would say, a lot less needy than my second. So I came back thinking, okay, you know, I took time off the gym. I own a gym, but I literally didn't come into the gym for at least 2 months after having both my kids. Mentally, I didn't want to have to come in and be like, oh, I can't do any of these things.
Yeah.
But for a variety of reasons. But so I remember thinking with my second, like, okay, this is how this happened with my first. It's probably going to be super similar. You have to remember every baby is different too. Yeah. So like my son needed a lot more from me. I wasn't able to just leave him in the car seat, you know, like most of the time like I did with my daughter while I got my workout in for an hour, you know. So just coming to terms with that, you just have to remember like it's just all different. So even comparing your own self from previous pregnancies and postpartums, just have to remember it's a different journey every time.
Yeah.
So true. Expectations. Like, you can have goals, like we said, but set your expectations at a realistic level and give yourself some grace. Like, if you don't get back to the gym for 6 months because you're taking care of your child and just maybe working on going for a walk here and there, like, that's okay. The gym will be there, and it's not the best idea in the world to go back to the gym when you're super stressed out and not sleeping anyways. So, like, let's lay some foundations first.
Yeah, and I think it's our job as trainers to constantly be that reminder and the safe haven for a postpartum woman. Because if coming to the gym makes them feel good, then great. We want that for them during that time. But how can they get what they need mentally and emotionally while still protecting themselves physically?
Yeah, and I think it's a hard balance as a trainer, because you're always someone who, you're a very supportive role, but you're also someone who's trying to, give someone space to learn new things about themselves and to push themselves and become better versions of themselves. So just learning that balance between support and not. I had a friend who took my 6-phase postpartum program last year, and she had a really hard time doing it at her home gym, because she'd go in and she's trying to work on the foundations, the fundamentals, and then she would text me and say, yeah, I cleaned like however much weight today, and now my back really hurts. I'm like, oh, how far along postpartum are you again? Oh, this is my 7th week. I was like, okay. And she said it was because it was so hard, because everyone in the gym was like, yes, you're back. Let's do this. Let's and they were so pumped to have her there, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But they were like, yeah, let's get you back to where you were before. And I guess just being okay with telling people.
No pressure.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm trying to build a foundation. And maybe just looking at it that way, like I'm trying to build a good foundation so that, in a few months or whatever, whenever I'm ready, I can crush that clean, or I can be doing this stuff without that back pain, without the incontinence, the prolapse symptoms, whatever, because you've built that foundation.
Yeah, knowing that it might take you longer than it took somebody else, which is exactly why you wrote your course based on phases versus weeks. Because you may be in a certain phase for a long time. And I know in my experience, I've had to go back. Like I'll think I'm good, and then I'll do certain movements that I start to notice just a hint of some diastasis. And I think, okay, well, there's a chip in that foundation. Let's go back to this phase. Let's center everything around that and then revisit it. And there's kind of a back and forth there too. But I think as trainers, reminding them that it is not a race. You have the rest of your life. That's so important.
Yeah, and I feel like we should touch on what some of the things are that we need. Like, what happens during pregnancy to our bodies that we need to, why do we need to recover and take it a lot easier in the beginning? Because when I went back to the gym, I don't remember hearing anything about like a diastasis, yes. But I remember the first time I struggled with like peeing my pants during some jump roping. And I went to the doctor and they were like, oh yeah, that's normal. If it doesn't get better, you can have surgery to fix it. And I'm like,
is that the only option?
Okay. And I was like, no one ever told me this, but it seems like every other mom at the gym is joking about this. And I know that if I would have maybe known some other strategies throughout my pregnancy and postpartum, I might not be dealing with it. So Kara, maybe break down like from an anatomy and movement perspective, like why moms, similar to like an athlete who might have just had surgery, like why do we need this time to recover? Because I don't think people fully understand the gravity of like what just happened and why we need to recover.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so of course during pregnancy, like we mentioned before, there's all kinds of hormone changes, which signals other, changes in your body. So you have your stomach, obviously, that is expanding. So you have this ligament called the linea alba that connects the two halves of your rectus abdominis or your core together, what people think of as your core or your six-pack together. And that has to stretch and thin to allow room for your baby to grow underneath that, right? And so that's expanding. We have our pelvic floor muscles. And those muscles regulate sexual function and, urination and going to the bathroom, stuff like that. They also act as a sling to hold your organs up in your body. And during pregnancy, they are getting a constantly, overload of more weight from the baby, from your extra blood supply, all this stuff. And they are, becoming, I guess the word could be compromised a little bit, stretched out, and it's different for everyone. And then, of course, then you have birth. And again, we've talked about it doesn't really matter whichever way you have it, there's going to be some trauma either way. And in your bone structure changes a little bit too, especially with birth, your pelvis and everything with the relaxin hormones. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that happens physically to you, and that's just a general overview. When you're pregnant and in labor and birth, so you do need to take that time, give your body some time to recover from all of that stuff. And if you can train in a certain way while you're pregnant, you can help to mitigate actually the stress that you're putting on your body during that time.
Right. So yeah, so much happens.
So much to talk about there.
So much happens. It's like why we expect people to just bounce back, like just not good.
Yeah, and it's not just like she's talking about, it's not just the core. It's not just why you don't need to get your abs back right away. There's, like you said, the foundation of the pelvic floor too is a huge thing that I don't think it's talked about as much initially because, I mean, you're talking about some delicate areas. But the more you know ahead of time, like you said, the more you can mitigate what actually happens and what damage is done.
Yeah. And on our next podcast, we're going to be talking a lot more about mindset, but like those are some key things that I think I take from all of this is like modify your mindset first, which we'll talk about. We talk a lot about in our course and on our Instagram. Be okay with saying no to people. Like, again, it's great that people are welcoming you back into the gym, but like, no, I don't want to come right back in and start snatching again and doing all the things that I was doing before. What else? What are there other like practical takeaways?
And I think also to say, like, if you do have a program or if you do have, going along with that, actually, I had a different thought pop into my head. Having a plan is important, I think, too. Because then you can also say to yourself and to other people, if you need to, this is my plan. This is what I'm following. Instead of, then you also don't feel so lost. And it's a lot easier to say, oh, this is where I'm at in my plan and it's okay, instead of like, oh, I don't really know what I'm doing. So I guess I'll just jump in and do this, or I'll follow this girl on Instagram who looks really awesome a month after she had her baby. So yeah, just to have your own plan. And the best way to do that, obviously, is to get it through a coach who knows what they're talking about. They've been educated and they want to support you in healing and recovery, building a solid foundation, and then moving on from there.
Yeah. And with that said, we are coming out with a 6-phase postpartum program. Should be coming out in the next couple of weeks. So keep your eye out for that. So really, it's awesome. Betsy followed it. Her sister's following it. So good. I have clients following it as well. And they love it because you progress at your own pace. There's no by week 2, you need to be doing this. You move on to the next part.
Expectations.
Yeah. You move on when you're ready to move on. And it's great. So keep your eye out for that.